Ever get that uncomfortable feeling around someone? Like an invisible current of unease, humming beneath their words? The legendary Carl Jung, a pioneer of the mind, spent his life charting the hidden landscapes of our psyche. And within those depths, he discovered a silent alarm bell, a subtle signal hinting at dangers far beyond any raised voice or overt threat. This isn't about obvious toxicity. It's something far more nuanced, and therefore, often overlooked by our conscious minds, yet instinctively felt in our gut. Ancient wisdom whispered of these encounters, but Jung gave us the language to understand them. The truly chilling part: this indicator can be present in people who seem perfectly normal, even magnetic. And when you pick up on it, trust your instincts and create distance. Consider this: you're in conversation, and suddenly, this person starts attributing feelings, beliefs, or negative traits to you that feel utterly alien. They're not responding to the real you, but to a shadowy figure they've conjured in their own mind. Sound familiar? This, my friends, is the Jungian shadow at play, a potent and often destructive force in human connection. The shadow encompasses all the aspects of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the traits we deem unacceptable and banish to the unconscious. But these banished parts don't simply disappear. They gather strength in the darkness. When someone regularly projects their shadow, it's a red flag, a sign of a profound inability to confront their denied aspects. They are blind to these elements within themselves, seeing them only in others. The danger lies in their absolute conviction. They genuinely believe you possess these negative qualities. Long before Jung's academic articulation, ancient spiritual paths understood this dynamic. In Hinduism, the concept of Maya, or illusion, speaks to our tendency to misperceive reality, often projecting our inner turmoil outwards. In various indigenous traditions, rituals involving mirrors aim to help individuals confront their own hidden aspects. What's truly unsettling is the projector's unwavering belief in their distorted reality. They aren't intentionally malicious. They honestly perceive in you what they cannot see in themselves. This distorted lens creates a powerful conviction, often swaying those around them. They can actually convince others of their skewed perception of you. Modern psychology, including cognitive behavioral therapy, reinforces the idea that our thoughts shape our reality. But in extreme shadow projection, this internal shaping becomes a grotesque distortion. Think of it as looking at the world through a funhouse mirror. Everything is warped and untrue. So, how do you recognize this dangerous projection in action? The key indicator is a deep dissonance between what they accuse you of and your own inner experience. They'll attribute motivations you've never entertained, assign emotions you haven't felt, and the most disturbing element, they do so with an unwavering certainty, resistant to any evidence that contradicts their view. What you're experiencing is an external manifestation of their internal conflict. You've become an unwilling participant in their struggle to deny parts of themselves. Pride goes before a fall, the old adage warns. Jung might add that the most treacherous pride is often cloaked in a guise of virtue. Ego inflation, as he described it, is a particularly insidious danger because it masquerades as enlightenment or righteousness. When you encounter someone utterly convinced of their superior intellect, their unwavering moral compass, or their exclusive access to truth, you are likely witnessing psychic inflation. Unlike garden variety arrogance, which is usually quite obvious, Jungian inflation is a far more subtle and potent phenomenon. It arises when an individual's ego unconsciously identifies with archetypal energies. The wise sage, the faultless leader, the ultimate authority. This person no longer perceives themselves as a limited human being, but as a vessel for something much larger, something infallible. Ancient Greek tragedies explored this theme, depicting the downfall of heroes who believed themselves touched by the gods. Eastern philosophies caution against spiritual materialism, clinging to notions of enlightenment as a possession, the warning sign, an utter lack of self. While true wisdom often breeds humility, the inflated ego exudes absolute certainty. They don't consider the possibility of being wrong because, in their mind, they are channeling universal truths. The danger here is the magnetic pull of such conviction. Jung observed how charismatic figures suffering from psychic inflation could attract devoted followers precisely because of their unwavering belief. This certainty can be seductive, offering a sense of security and definitive answers in a complex world. However, this foundation is built on a fragile, inflated ego. How do you spot this psychic inflation? Observe their reaction to challenge or disagreement. They don't process differing viewpoints as opportunities for growth or discussion, but as a threat to their elevated status. Questioning isn't seen as intellectual engagement, but as a rebellion against the truth they embody. Jung cautioned that this state poses a significant threat not only to those around the inflated individual, but primarily to themselves. The chasm between their inflated self-perception and their actual human limitations creates immense psychic pressure, eventually leading to a brutal reckoning. The higher the inflation, the more devastating the fall, when reality inevitably asserts itself. What could be more disconcerting than interacting with someone who seems to anticipate your every need, whose responses are always perfect? Jung identified a troubling pattern in certain individuals. A social adaptation so seamless it erases all the messy, unpredictable, and authentic aspects of being human. This flawless facade, the persona, a mask we all wear to some extent, but which becomes dangerous when we completely identify with it, is a warning signal our intuition often picks up on before our conscious mind can analyze it. Total identification with the persona signifies a profound disconnect between the outward presentation and the inner self. Authenticity is sacrificed at the altar of social acceptance, creating a polished veneer so convincing that even the wearer can lose sight of what lies beneath. As the philosopher Nietzsche explored, the danger lies in living a role so completely that the true self withers. Various theatrical traditions throughout history have used masks to explore themes of identity and the dangers of losing oneself in a role. The red flag arises when you sense a palpable lack of genuine spontaneity in your interactions. While their behavior might be technically impeccable, they always say the right things, display the appropriate emotions. It all feels somehow hollow. It lacks the delightful imperfections and unexpectedness that characterize genuine human connection. As Jungian analyst Marion Woodman observed, an overly rigid persona often hides a profoundly wounded inner child. Neuroscience offers insights here too. Our brains are wired to detect ink when someone's words, facial expressions, and body language are perfectly aligned, but contradict an underlying sense of unease we feel. Our internal alarm bells start to ring. This subtle dissonance often indicates a significant disconnect between their outer presentation and inner reality. The real danger lies in what this extreme dissociation conceals. When all psychic energy is channeled into maintaining this perfect external image, the unacknowledged aspects of the personality don't vanish. They fester in the unconscious, forming a potent shadow. And the more rigid the persona, the more unpredictable and potentially destructive the shadow will be when it inevitably breaks through. Jungian psychologist Eric Newman noted that individuals with overly developed personas often experience sudden and dramatic reversals. Moments where the carefully constructed facade crumbles, revealing the chaotic and often terrifying contents of their repressed unconscious. This explains why seemingly together individuals can sometimes act in shockingly out-of-character ways. Complete identification with the social persona, in Jung's view, is a form of self-betrayal, an abandonment of authentic individuality for a manufactured image. And like any deep betrayal, it carries a significant psychological cost. Imagine you're speaking with someone, and suddenly there's a palpable shift. It's the same physical being, but their eyes seem different. Their energy feels ancient. Their presence takes on a strange, almost otherworldly quality. This unsettling experience, described as spirit possession, in some cultures, was conceptualized by Jung as archetypal possession, a deeply alarming sign. Archetypes, for Jung, are universal patterns embedded in the collective unconscious, fundamental blueprints that shape our experiences. When an archetype seizes control of an individual's consciousness, their personal identity becomes overwhelmed by these transpersonal energies far beyond their ego's capacity to integrate. Shamanic cultures around the globe have long understood this phenomenon, differentiating between controlled channeling and involuntary possession. Various mystical traditions speak of being carried away by forces beyond one's individual will. The warning sign arises when you perceive someone has lost their normal psychological elasticity. becoming rigidly fixed on a single archetypal role. It might be the unwavering martyr, the vengeful destroyer, the all-knowing guru. The specific archetype is less crucial than the complete and unquestioning identification with it. Revealing clues include a peculiar intensity in their gaze, a monologic quality to their speech as if reciting a script, and a distinct feeling that the person you knew has temporarily receded, replaced by something else. As Jungian analyst Edward Edinger explored, this can manifest as an individual becoming a literal mouthpiece for an archetype, losing their personal nuance and complexity. Modern neuroscience acknowledges altered states of consciousness where certain brain regions associated with self-awareness show decreased activity, while areas linked to more primal or transpersonal experiences become hyperactive. While these states can be valuable in controlled spiritual or ritualistic contexts, they can be profoundly disruptive and even dangerous when they occur spontaneously and without integration. What's particularly concerning is the profound sense of certainty and purpose experienced by someone in the grip of archetypal possession. The ambiguities of everyday consciousness are replaced by an unwavering conviction that can be incredibly persuasive to others. Jung observed how charismatic cult leaders and political demagogues often exhibit this quality. Their absolute certainty acting as a powerful, albeit potentially destructive, force. The fundamental danger lies in the inherent polarities within archetypes. The archetype of the healer, for example, can manifest as profound compassion or as a controlling, even manipulative, savior complex. When someone becomes completely identified with an archetype, they will inevitably express its darker aspects, often with no awareness of the contradiction. Jung documented numerous cases of individuals overtaken by archetypes, committing acts utterly contrary to their stated values, often followed by periods of amnesia or elaborate rationalizations. Archetypal possession represents a temporary eclipse of the very faculty that defines our humanity. So, there's a psychological phenomenon so deeply disturbing that recognizing it feels like witnessing a slow-motion train wreck. Jung termed it compulsion to repeat, an unconscious drive to reenact the same painful patterns in relationships and life circumstances, as if trapped in an invisible cycle of suffering. This signal, when clearly perceived in another, is a stark warning. You are likely on the periphery of a deeply ingrained, unresolved psychological drama that is not your own. What's truly alarming about the compulsion to repeat is its automatic and unconscious nature. The person isn't deliberately choosing to create these destructive scenarios. They are driven by deep-seated psychic forces operating entirely outside their conscious awareness. As psychoanalytic theorist Otto Kernberg explored, these repetitions often stem from early relational experiences that were never adequately processed. Various wisdom traditions have long recognized this tendency. The concept of samsara in Eastern philosophies describes a cyclical existence driven by unresolved desires and attachments, leading to repeated patterns of suffering. The idea of generational trauma in modern psychology highlights how unconscious patterns can be passed down through families, perpetuating cycles of pain. The revealing sign: observing someone who consistently finds themselves in remarkably similar painful situations with different people, following an eerily familiar script. Even more unsettling is their genuine surprise each time the pattern reemerges, as if they are a helpless victim of fate rather than an unconscious architect of their recurring experience. Neuroscience has begun to shed light on the biological underpinnings of this phenomenon. Early experiences, particularly traumatic ones, can hardwire neural pathways, creating a biological predisposition to repeat familiar patterns, even if those patterns are detrimental. The brain develops an unconscious expectation that seeks to confirm its existing models of the world, even when those models lead to suffering. The most dangerous aspect is that individuals, caught in these unconscious repetitions, often unwittingly attempt to recruit others to play specific roles in their unresolved internal dramas. As transactional analysis theory highlights, we can unconsciously recreate familiar relational dynamics in our present-day interactions. Without realizing it, you might find yourself cast in a play that began long before you entered the scene. Jung observed a fascinating correlation. The more unconscious the compulsion to repeat, the more it seems to manifest as striking coincidences or synchronicities in external life. The individual unconsciously creates situations that mirror their internal conflicts, but experiences these events as imposed by an external, often hostile, force. Jungian therapists often identify this pattern when they hear recurring narratives of betrayal, abandonment, or victimization, where the details change but the underlying theme remains strikingly consistent. As Jung himself stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What's deeply unsettling is the almost magnetic quality of this compulsion. The person unconsciously emits signals that attract precisely those who can help them reenact their original wounds. Jung termed this negative synchronicity, the uncanny ability of the unconscious to orchestrate encounters that perpetuate its unresolved patterns. If these signals illuminate the deepest dangers, there is a transformative path that transcends these threats: the conscious integration of the shadow. This process is the crucial distinguishing factor between individuals who remain trapped in these destructive patterns and those who embark on the journey toward psychic wholeness. The remarkable thing is that we can recognize this integration as clearly as we identify its absence, and when we witness it in someone, we are encountering the very antithesis of psychological danger. Shadow integration doesn't equate to moral perfection or the eradication of negative traits. Instead, it involves a humble and honest acknowledgement of our own capacity for the very darkness we might readily see in others. As Jung wisely stated, "I would rather be whole than good," a profound insight highlighting the difference between authentic, psychological integrity and a superficial facade of goodness that often masks dangerous internal divisions. Various spiritual disciplines, from mindfulness practices to contemplative prayer, emphasize the importance of accepting and integrating all aspects of oneself. The indicators of someone genuinely engaged in this integration are palpable: a unique blend of honesty about their own flaws and a deep compassion for the flaws of others. They can acknowledge their own problematic impulses without excessive shame or self-flagellation, recognizing them simply as part of the shared human condition that demands ongoing awareness. Modern psychology, particularly approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy emphasizes the importance of accepting difficult emotions rather than struggling against them. This acceptance is a key component of shadow integration. What's truly transformative about this process is that, paradoxically, consciously acknowledging our darker aspects dramatically reduces the likelihood of unconsciously acting them out. As Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson eloquently put it, "What we resist persists." Conscious integration transforms potentially destructive psychic energy into a source of creativity and understanding. The individual who has genuinely embarked on this inner work exhibits a remarkable quality: the ability to see the world in shades of gray, rather than rigid black and white. They move beyond simplistic judgments of good and bad, recognizing the inherent complexity of human nature. As Jungian psychologist James Hollis has emphasized, psychological maturity begins when we relinquish the fantasy of our own absolute innocence. Authentic spiritual teachers throughout history have embodied this integration. Think of the imperfections and struggles openly acknowledged by figures like St. Augustine, or the earthy wisdom found in many folktales. This radical honesty stands in stark contrast to the artificial perfection projected by those who are dissociated from their own shadows. The most reliable indicator of integration in progress is a compelling combination of genuine humility, not performative modesty, and authentic authority, not overbearing authoritarianism. The integrated person doesn't feel the need to loudly proclaim their goodness or wisdom because they have transcended the need for an immaculate self-image. As the Tao Te Ching suggests, true wisdom often appears unassuming. Before we conclude, have you recognized any of these signals in significant people in your life? Or, perhaps more importantly, have you glimpsed aspects of these patterns within yourself? If this message has resonated with you, please share your insights in the comments below. Consciousness is the vital first step toward transformation. Don't forget to share this video with those who might need to awaken to the unconscious dynamics in their relationships. Subscribe for more explorations into the profound and illuminating world of Jungian psychology.